Did you know that the United Arab Emirates is India's second largest trading partner? Did you know that the UAE is the third largest source of FDI into India? Did you know that the Indian expat population in the UAE has nearly doubled from 2.7 million in 2014? And here is a wow fact. Did you know that 4 million Indian tourists visit the UAE every year? Hello and welcome to another edition of Capital Calculus. I am your host Anil Padmanabhan. Little over a week ago, Prime Minister Narendra Modi concluded what was his 7th visit in 9 years to the United Arab Emirates. Prior to this, the last Indian Prime Minister to visit the UAE was Indira Gandhi in 1981. This decades of diplomatic neglect is baffling, to say the least, especially since the UAE and the region in general are critical to India's energy security. At the same time, the region is also home to a lot of Indian expats. In the case of UAE, it is home to 3.7 million Indians. More importantly, the question is whether the PM has been able to make up lost ground in the last 9 years that he's pursued this makeover in this relationship. To answer all this and more, I spoke to Sanjay Sudhir. He's India's ambassador to the United Arab Emirates and someone who has worked very closely with this makeover and has enjoyed a ringside view of these changing circumstances. As I pointed out in the introduction, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was the first Indian PM to visit the UAE in 34 years. I was curious to know whether in the 7 subsequent trips that he has made to this country, whether India has been able to make up the lost time.
Well, I would say that India has more than made up for the lost time, because you're right. There was a gap of about 34 years. Actually, the previous visit was in 1981 by the then Prime Minister, Ms. Indira Gandhi, in 1981. And then it was Prime Minister Modi visiting the UAE in 2015. And since then, as you rightly said, there have been 7 visits of Prime Minister to the UAE. And that makes the UAE the second most visited country for Prime Minister. And in this time, there have also been 4 visits by the UAE President, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, to India. Actually, if you look at just the last 8 months, Prime Minister has visited thrice. There is also a very strong chemistry between the two leaders. And actually, if you see this rapid transformation in this relationship, it has been driven by the leaders themselves. Right from the signing of the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Agreement in 2017, when His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed was our chief guest at our Republic Day, down to, say, the vision statement, unveiling the vision statement in February 2022, which provides some kind of a roadmap for our relationship for the future. This relationship has been guided by the leaders, by the vision of the leaders, and it is diversified in so many new areas. And you'll also note a mutually very special treatment which India and the UAE have been sort of according to each other. For instance, when India was the chair of G20 last year, India invited the UAE as one of the special invitees. And at the same time, if you look at COP28, Prime Minister was actually the only world leader to speak at the ceremonial welcome plenary of COP28. I think these are very, very special things which have been happening in the recent years.
What is it? Can you just fill us up? I mean, how is it that they struck such a good chemistry between each other?
I think it- to strike the right chemistry is a hallmark of Prime Minister Modi, and also a hallmark of the UAE President, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed. As they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. But the picture of the warm embrace between our leaders is worth a million words. So if you see the last visit of Prime Minister to the UAE just last week on the 13th, 14th of this month, uh, His Highness was there himself to receive Prime Minister at the airport. And if you just go back a month, uh, when His Highness visited Ahmedabad as chief guest of Vibrant Gujarat, there again Prime Minister was there to receive His Highness, and the pictures of the warm embrace, because this doesn't happen uh, in other relationships. So in this relationship, we have been going well beyond the established protocol norms, and that's where I would say the personal chemistry between the leaders comes into play. There is immense trust between the leaders. So then it becomes much easier for their own visions to then converge into actionable areas, which actually then guides the relationship forward.
In fact, one actionable area is SEPA, which you did mention in your opening remarks. Coincidentally, today is the second anniversary of the signing of the relationship. So, has SEPA fulfilled the expectations that kind of expedited the whole deal?
Well, SEPA certainly has been a milestone in our bilateral relationship. So if you just wind the clock back to exactly 2 years, yeah, you're right. SEPA was signed on the 22nd of February, 2022. Uh, SEPA was a milestone, I think, both for India and for the UAE. For India, it was the first SEPA ever with any country in the Middle East. For the UAE, it was their first SEPA ever with any country anywhere in the world. And after that, of course, UAE has signed a few more SEPAs with other countries in the region and beyond. But this was a very historic SEPA also because this was negotiated in 88 days flat, which is a very, very short time. And that again reflects the kind of trust, the mutual trust which we have with each other. So it has been a milestone, and I think it has worked very well for both countries. Trade has both deepened and has diversified. India is the UAE's second largest trading partner. The UAE is India's third largest trading partner, and also our second top export destination. If you look at the first year of progress in SEPA, trade has got boosted to about $85 billion, and there was a clear hike of about 16% in the first year. So if you compare overall trade relationships, say from the financial year 13-14, where trade was just about $59 billion. Today, it's at a very impressive $85 billion. Also, we should not miss sight of the fact that in this visit of Prime Minister Modi, we also signed the bilateral investment treaty within 2 years of SEPA, because trade eventually also supports investment. So they both go hand in hand. And when we signed the BIT with the UAE last week, actually UAE became the only country with which India has both a SEPA and a BIT. UAE has already been a major trading partner and trade and investment partner for India. We are very confident that BIT will further lead to uh, increase in investments. In fact, again, investment also has shown very impressive figures. In our financial year 2022-23, UAE was the fourth largest source of FDI at about $3.4 billion, and the seventh largest overall FDI source for India. Again, going back about a month when His Highness visited Ahmedabad as chief guest of Vibrant Gujarat, one of the key announcements there was their largest sovereign wealth fund, ADIA, opening an office in Gift City. Now, moves like this and the three MOUs which were signed for investments in innovative healthcare, renewables, food parks during that visit, again will lead to more investments. One one area of investment which also stands out is that UAE has been very forthcoming in considering investing in Jammu and Kashmir. There are several projects in the pipeline with MR, Lulu Group, with DP World. Uh, so these are very significant things in terms of investments.
Ambassador, is there a timeline for the investments in Jammu Kashmir?
Well, they have been moving very well. MR, which is one of the leading real estate giants of the UAE, already has a lot of investments in India. But for them to move into solid investments in Jammu and Kashmir is a big thing. So they are already in the process of making big shopping malls there, developing real estate there. These things are happening. They're in the pipeline.
So, which is basically also a big signal to the world that Kashmir is no longer what it was perceived to be earlier, right?
Yeah, I think that reality should be brought to the notice of the world. And this is how things will get noticed. Today, the UAE, which is also, as you know, a trading hub for this part of the world, and also beyond, is importing a lot of stuff from Jammu and Kashmir. So on the shelves of supermarkets here, you will see apples from Kashmir, you will see saffron from Kashmir. So these are things which are already happening.
Ambassador, if we take a step back over the last 7 years, India is, of course, established very deep relationships with the United Arab Emirates, but it's also pursuing similar relationships with other countries in West Asia. So, the seeming subtext seems to be to restore the primacy of the Arabian Sea region. How do you see this impacting global polity?
Well, I think that's a very important point you have raised. West Asia or the Middle East or GCC, whichever way you look at it, is something which really is now getting the attention it deserves. If you look at the engagement which has happened, you've already mentioned the 7 visits of Prime Minister to the UAE. But UAE is not alone in this, although the number of visits here has been very high as compared to other countries. But Prime Minister has visited other countries. In fact, in his last visit to the UAE, it was coupled with a visit to Qatar. Previously, he has visited Saudi Arabia. He's visited other countries in this part of the world. There has been very recently a visit by Sheikh Mohammed bin Salman, a state visit just following our G20 summit in Delhi. There was a visit by the Sultan of Oman a few months back. Now, this engagement has been very important and very, very required, because West Asia, after all, is a part of our extended neighborhood. A large number of Indian expats live and work in this part of the world. So we have people-to-people contact. So we have interest from that perspective. We have an interest from the perspective of trade, a perspective of investment, perspective of regional security. So it's very much getting the attention which it deserves now.
In this rapidly evolving relationship, India has access to one key soft power resource, the Indian expats. I was curious to know as to how this was playing out.
Well, people-to-people contacts are a historical fact. And so is trade, starting from the trade in pearls and Indian ships landing at Port Rashid in Dubai. But now what you see now, what is new, is the rapid rise in number of Indians here. In say 2014, there were just about 2.2 million Indians. And now within 10 years, the number is now 3.5 million. Actually, the number of Indians in the UAE is 45% of the entire Indian diaspora of about 8 million in the GCC. So there's been a rapid rise. There has also been high remittances, about, say, $22 billion from UAE alone. And after the largest remittance corridor, which is the US and Mexico, Perhaps, according to the figures published by The Economist magazine, UAE to India is the second largest remittance corridor. So, using people-to-people contacts and historical trade as an edifice, our relationship today has become truly multidimensional.
Interesting, because one of the decisions taken during the PM's visit last week was the launch of the J1 card, which is the equivalent of the Indian UPI here in the UAE.
The implication, as you asked, is to enhance the ease of living of Indians here, to enhance payments between our trading communities on both sides, to enhance our economic engagement. Now, what is so, I would say, wonderful about this relationship is that it has gone also well beyond trade and investment also. Because now we are integrating our financial systems, our payment systems. As you mentioned, the launch of the G1 card, actually is pronounced as G1 card. It's a very historic milestone, and it talks about the maturity of our engagement at the level of our central banks, at the level of our payment systems. So what you saw during the visit was the launch of the G1 card, the G1 debit and credit card. And a transaction was done by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed himself in the presence of Prime Minister. So this Jeevan card is based entirely on India's RuPay debit and credit card stack. So we have been using the stack for the last 12 years, as some kind of an alternative to other established cards, because any country would need that sovereignty element in its payment systems, and this has been a huge success. So UAE is actually the first country with which India has shared this fintech stack. So another thing you would have seen would be the launch of a co-branded Jeevan and RuPay card during the Prime Minister's visit. So an agreement was also signed to basically link the Jeevan card and the RuPay in a way that all RuPay cards are acceptable at all POS machines and ATM machines in the UAE, and all Jeevan cards issued in the UAE can be operated at all POS machines and ATM machines in India. As regards UPI, yes, UPI is a little separate issue, because there was also an agreement to connect UPI with the instant payment platform of the UAE, which is called ANI. And once this gets connected, maybe say about 3 months from now, once it gets connected, then it will provide seamless payments for our 3.5 million Indians here, and also the 4 million Indian tourists which visit the UAE every year. And I think this also be on the scale of it, again, would be a first of its kind anywhere in the world. So the way somebody in Delhi could make a payment to somebody in Kochi or Mumbai would then be the same ease with which somebody could transact between Delhi and Dubai, or Delhi or Abu Dhabi. So, this is the kind of thing which we are moving to. And if you recall Prime Minister's visit in July, at that time, a very important mechanism was signed, which was for settlement of trade in local currencies. Now, that again provides us, as in the two countries, an option to transact trade in Indian rupees and UAE dirham. And after that, there have been there's been an oil transaction, gold transaction, food transactions done using our own currencies. So this is something which is very fundamental, which is happening.
A key building block in developing the Arabian Sea region is the IMEEC, or the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, which proposes to connect India to Europe through the Arabian Sea region. This deal was inked on the sidelines of the G20 summit last year. I was curious to know whether the breakout of conflict in West Asia had put this project on the back burner.
Well, the fact that our two countries signed the framework agreement is a very clear signal that we will not be deterred by what's happening in the region. Obviously, things will improve with the participation, contribution of countries involved. But one point which is highlighted by the what is going on in the region is that we need alternate supply routes, and IMEC is one such alternate supply route, and therefore there's also urgency to work on IMEC, and that's exactly what India and the UAE have done. They've shown their commitment in concrete terms, and the rest will follow.
For decades, India neglected West Asia in general and the United Arab Emirates in particular. But we learnt today that beginning 2015, India started to undertake a dramatic course correction. In fact, now the UAE has emerged as a principal partner for India. Together, the two countries are seeking to revive the primacy of the Arabian Sea region. In this, India has one added asset. Its expats based here and the 4 million who visit the UAE annually. Hopefully, this combination of soft power and hard power will enable India to achieve the desired milestones. For starters, it has broken the ice with this region, and now the catchphrase here is Marhaba India. In Arabic it means welcome India. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to StratNewsGlobal on YouTube. Hit the bell icon so that you don't miss any updates. And please do share your thoughts, ideas and suggestions with us. I'm available on Twitter at Capital Calculus. I'll be back next week with another episode. Till then, stay safe.
Pakistan did not have the capacity to return these loans and to benefit from them. So there was a great deal of doubt and hesitation in China about the CPEC itself. But the overall relationship is a strategic one. And it is also, from China's point of view, a cheap and low cost way of containing India.
Welcome to StratNewsGlobal. I'm Ramananda Sengupta. Our very, very special guest today is Ambassador Ajay Bisaria, former High Commissioner to Pakistan, who's been in the news lately because of this incredible book that he's written called Anger Management. For anybody who's interested in what's going on in the subcontinent, I would recommend that you pick up your copy right away. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir. I appreciate your taking time out.
Thank you for having me, Ram.
Thank you. So let's start right from the top. This book is clearly a labor of love and a lot of research, and it must have involved a lot of sacrifices and of course a discipline. How much sacrifices did you have to make to sort of regarding your family life, your personal life, your golf, things like that? And B, in the process of research, did any personal notions about Pakistan or diplomacy sort of change?
This book is very much a fruit of the COVID lockdown. Mm-hmm. After finishing my tenure in Pakistan, I went as Indian High Commissioner to Canada.
That's right.
And we were soon hit by COVID. So I was fielding a lot the question of what do Indian diplomats do in Pakistan? And when I decided to write about it, I wanted to read about it. And, I spent a couple of years reading about what my predecessors had gone to particularly. And I think that is what triggered it. And I said, it's such an interesting story, it must be told. And somewhere along the line, I tried to tell the story of the entire sweep of 76 years of the relationship. Mm-hmm. But you're right, there are a lot of ideas of mine and notions which I changed in the writing and looking at the research, because the cyclicality of the relationship is something that strikes you, that we go through good times and bad times, and are there any general pointers towards what we do to improve the relationship, or what mistakes we don't repeat which makes a relationship plunge. Mm-hmm. And I did come to one conclusion, that there are many structural factors in the relationship that make it very hard to improve matters.
Right.
And we need in this relationship to be constantly creating diplomacy and to be creative about how to deal, particularly in India's case with Pakistan. Because India has more, I think, creative space in the diplomacy than Pakistan does, which is led by the structural factor of the army
Right.
dominating everything and dominating the narrative and dominating the discourse, whereas India has more space in dealing with this relationship. So I think it is a complex relationship, and it is important to see what we've done and the errors we've made in the past in order not to repeat them.
Yes, sir. You mentioned that it's a cyclical relationship, and that which is actually quite true. Part of that seems to be a notion that that India will bluster a lot, go into chest thumping, and then say let's play cricket. I think that used to be the notion earlier. Now we have obviously taken a much firmer stand. In your book, you also refer to people like Mani Dixit, the Lamba, having a rather hardline sort of a policy towards it. I mean, advocating a rather hardline policy, and you also have people who are advocating more softer, more how would I say it, a nuanced stand. And you yourself said that anything that we do has to be sort of rooted through the army first, because they're actually the people in charge, keeping, of course, the civilian government thing. But given that the army is, or let's call it the deep state, given that their entire existence is dependent on this India bogey, how difficult is that to do, to just keep on, how much can we trust them?
I think that's a very valid point. And your question raises two issues. One is about whether there is diplomatic space in this relationship. And the notion that diplomats always carry is that there is space for diplomacy, that we could do some smart diplomacy in order to change the trajectory of the relationship. So there is space for diplomacy, but there are also severe limits to diplomacy. And that we have not been able to recognize very clearly and clear-headedly in this relationship. So, for instance, I make the point that diplomacy can be useful up to a point, beyond which one has to use kinetic or military means, and because of the kind of challenges you face, and particularly the challenge of terrorism. So there is a reason for diplomats, or diplomats should be alive to the fact that diplomacy has its limits, and at times you need to, in a situation, use force or coercive diplomacy as well as a tool of expressing your national interest and trying to change the behavior of the other adversarial state. The other point you raise is about policy. So have all Indian diplomats agreed on the kind of policy you should have for Pakistan? So we may, a lot of times we agree on the analysis of what is wrong with Pakistan, the dominance of the army, the structural factors and so on. But we don't always agree on the policy response we should have.
Right.
And that is what you refer to. And I tried to see what my predecessors had recommended as policy when they wrote their memoirs, wrote their books. And you could clearly see that there was a spectrum of views. So there was the hardliners who advocated a very hard position on Pakistan, and there were those who were the so-called doves in the aviary who recommended a softer approach. But where I come out personally, and where a few others have come out, is saying that you have to have a nuanced, creative approach somewhere in the center that takes in both a hard power approach and a diplomatic approach, the need for being tough, for instance, on terrorism, and at the same time being open to creative diplomacy. And one of the recommendations I would certainly make is that, given the army's predominance in Pakistan's power structure, we should have a continuous engagement with the army. And we should, in fact, whenever we are talking to the civilians, for whatever reason, and come up with ideas. We should triangulate that with the army and ensure that the army is on board, because several times in this relationship, we have talked only to civilians to find later that the army was not on board and was actively trying to sabotage what the civilians were doing. So perhaps learning from all these errors of the past, we need a more clear-headed approach about what Pakistan is.
No, I understand what you're saying, but my question was somewhat different. Okay, let me put it another way. The army seems to be taking its playbook from China, where they're now getting into the civilian space as well, as directors of various institutions, civilian institutions as well. So it's becoming increasingly difficult to sort of separate the two. There is an argument to be made that by sort of talking to the army, you're actually undermining a civilian administration. How valid is that argument?
So, I would contest that argument by saying that India's business of India's foreign policy is to promote its national interest. And therefore, we have to deal with Pakistan the way it is, rather than the way it should be in our interest or the interest of its people. Of course, democracy is welcome. Of course, a good democracy is better than a bad democracy. But if you have a country which is run by an army or a communist party, however much you would like it to be otherwise, you would have to deal with that institution.
Absolutely.
We dealt with Pakistan in the Musharraf years, or all the 30 years Pakistan had dictators. We dealt with those dictators. The fact is that even when Pakistan doesn't have a dictator in the front office, that dictator is present in the back office.
Very much so.
Being either the puppeteer of the civilians or deeply influencing foreign and security policy. So we must recognize that reality about Pakistan, and in formulating our policy or our tactical approach, recognize that we should be talking to this central and primary power institution of Pakistan.
Absolutely. I mean, that's similar to what we do with, let's say, places like Myanmar or wherever else we do.
Absolutely.
We talk to the people in charge.
Yeah.
Because there's no point talking to somebody who doesn't have that clout. Let's talk about Imran Khan. He evokes mixed reactions all over the world. I think people either love him or hate him. Or in Pakistan, I think he's quite popular at the moment. You met him, I believe, a couple of times or whatever it is. But I'll come to your personal views on that later. But more importantly, do you think the way the PTI was sidelined and the way those, the unrest that followed Imran's arrest and all that, I think his followers just seem to walk into military installations, which is very strange if you ask me. Even in regular times, military installation would be very heavily guarded. So, and then the fact that in the recent elections, his sort of people seem to have taken quite a large, sizable chunk of the vote. Does that undermine the army structure in any way?
The army is dealing with something new. It's dealing with a kind of street power it had not experienced before. So, for instance, in rigging the 2024 election so brazenly as it did, what the army had as a model was the 2018 election. Where what it did simply was a lot of pre-election engineering. It had cases against Nawaz Sharif, put him in jail, promoted Imran Khan a bit, and Imran Khan won, So this is what they had expected this time. What was different was that there was a wave of popular support for Imran Khan, for which the army itself was partly responsible, because there was an anti-army mood as well. For the way the army had both brazenly rigged the election and dealt with the 9th May events that you're referring to last year, and so on. And the army itself had got a little confused, particularly in the transition between Bajwa and Asim Munir. And weekend. So, their response to the 9th May arrest of Imran Khan and the subsequent rioting was very hesitant. They did not want to use force. And of course, the chasms within the army and the different views within the army, the sympathy for Imran Khan were also apparent. So, all this became apparent, particularly during the 9th May events. And here, in the 8th February elections that we just saw recently, there was a glimpse of what the election results would actually have been.
Right.
Which was a vote favoring Imran Khan and his independence since
Right.
the symbol was taken away from the PTI. But the fact is that 1 month down the line, the army is back to being in charge. There was a weak moment where it couldn't control everything because, you know, the army is not always in control of the situation. It tries to improvise its reactions, but clearly the empire has struck back. They are back in business and, you know, they have what they wanted, which is a political landscape which is minus Imran and also minus Nawaz. And
course, yes, sir.
they have a weak coalition in play, which will be completely dependent on them. And they are hoping that Imran Khan, either by cajoling him or giving him a deal or in some shape or form, will be bottled and the Imran challenge will go away. And you would have in play a political government which is beholden to the army. And therefore, the army will be in charge of the situation in the coming couple of years, except that they can't manage the economy. And
Absolutely,
they've been
yes.
part of the problem that the economy faces. So that is the most severe challenge. The political challenge is something. So they have created this institution of the SIFC, the Special
Yes, of course,
Investment
yes.
Facilitation Council, which has the army chief also as a member. So somewhere along the line, I think we have to understand the way the army looks at it. And in the past, famously, Benazir Bhutto had pointed out that the army looked at itself as the defender of the ideological frontiers of Pakistan.
Right.
Along the way, the Bajwa doctrine said, and they realized that there was a 10x differential between India and Pakistan's economy was sinking, making the army weaker, the country weaker. So they said there should be a primacy to geo-economics as against geopolitics, which means that you've got to strengthen the state to have a strong army. So the army felt that the economy sinking further is not in Pakistan's security interest either. So I think for that reason, it involves itself in governing the economy either by military ink, which is you know, more than $20 billion of direct control on the economy through its various Fauji foundations and running PIA, but indirectly also in controlling the economy in so many different ways by controlling the land, the defense lands and so on, that it has become part of the problem that led the economy into such dire straits, and somehow it seems to believe that it can be part of the solution rather than leaving that to civilian governments to do deep structural reforms.
So we were talking about Imran Khan. You met him a couple of times. What would be your first impression about him?
You know, when I met Imran Khan, I did not see him as a very anti-India person. He spoke very warmly about India and the times he played cricket in India, the number of friends he had in India, and very positively about the Indian cricket team and even about Indian politics. He told me in a meeting 4 days before he became Prime Minister that India has managed its coalition system so well, and that is what a diverse country like India needs. But somewhere along the line, I think his inexperience showed, and particularly after Article 370, he was so inexperienced that he took on such a hardline position that he found it hard to get off the tiger and, you know, take a very strong position against India's leaders personally, to personalize the situation, to talk about Jammu and Kashmir as a deal breaker in the relationship. So I think all that made him reduce the diplomatic space for him as well as for his successor governments, which were so weak. So what you need in Pakistan is a stronger government, or at least a government with a strong backing by the army, to be able to you know, change that narrative and get on to a position of giving itself space in dealing with India.
In fact, I remember being surprised once hearing that, you know, that General Bajwa was for peace and Imran Khan said no. So, I mean, has that sort of reversed the whole?
Yes, that was certainly the dynamic. in that the army itself, particularly the time I was there, seemed to favor a better relationship with India. And you would have seen the various leaks that emerged after the Imran-Bajwa divorce. There were various media leaks, and one of which said that Bajwa was even in conversation through various back channels to say there could be a 20-year freeze on the Kashmir problem. And so it was a pragmatic understanding of the power differential and dealing with India in enlightened self-interest of Pakistan to say that war or confrontation with India was not in the interest of Pakistan. Whereas Imran Khan was not buying it, and he had taken a position which he did not want to step back from. So it was a odd situation, and completely reversed, as you said, because traditionally it was the civilians who wanted to make good with India and the army which felt it was not in their interest to do it. But it was reversed in Imran Khan's time. It was that the army seemed keen but hesitant because of being in a phase of transition, particularly before Bajwa's extension of his term was coming up and so on. But the civilians seem to be questioning that path.
I have, about 20,000 more questions based on what I read on the book, sir, but I'll conclude with two quick last questions. One is that, the China factor. I think China is having problems with CPEC and things like that. They've sort of, I wouldn't say second thoughts, they've invested a lot of money there. Is there a way for India to leverage that, number one? And, or do you really think that, China is having second thoughts? Because that's my opinion from what I've read. That's the first question. And then, of course, what do you see next? What do you see happening next?
On the China piece, I think there are two parts to your question. One is the CPEC.
Right.
As an instrument of the newest strategic relationship between China and Pakistan. So yes, CPEC seems to have failed, because there were a lot of articles periodically, even in the Pakistani media, which said, is CPEC dead? Because it was envisaged as a $64 billion project, and with multiple projects of different natures, one arm going into Punjab and the other into Balochistan up to Gwadar. But the Chinese halted it at about $22-24 billion because they felt that this was throwing good money after bad. The returns were getting bad. There was danger to the projects in Balochistan. They were not being protected enough. And they certainly felt that Pakistan did not have the capacity to return these loans and to benefit from them. So there was a great deal of doubt and hesitation in China about the CPEC itself. But the overall relationship is a strategic one. And, it is also, from China's point of view, a cheap and low-cost way of containing India. The strategic partnership that they developed right from the 60s has now been bolstered by a relationship of complete economic dependence. So there was a strategic partnership, or a strong strategic interest in containing India for both the countries. Add to that China was responsible for Pakistan's nuclear program, its air program, its defense program, and everything else. And then Pakistan became dependent on China for its economic survival. So much of the debt of external debt of Pakistan today is from China, and China is the lender of last resort. So the dependence is huge, and China's use for a vassal state is also high. So the relationship isn't going anywhere. You might tactically change your BRI CPEC into another sort of means, but what India needs to prepare for is both a diplomatic and military answer to a collusion between these two states in the future.
What we keep talking about, a two-front war and things like
Absolutely, a two-front war, a unified front war. I mean, we need to be militarily prepared for it and diplomatically prepared to counter it. So that is one. On what happens in the future of Pakistan, I think the most immediate challenge they have is to get this 24th IMF loan of $6 billion, because that is required for survival. And Shehbaz Sharif has called it a problem higher than the Himalaya, because that is clearly a huge problem. I think the political problems will be solved because the army will give the support to Shehbaz Sharif. And as long as he has the pleasure of Asim Munir, the army chief, he will remain prime minister. So I think the next stage of political drama might come 18 months later when Asim Munir comes up for his extension after his 3-year term.
Right.
And till then, it's likely that this government continues. Of course, there is speculation that Bilawal Bhutto is waiting in the wings.
Yes.
The Gen next Prime Minister, and there could be a decision then to, if Shehbaz Sharif isn't performing to the satisfaction of the army, to flip him and have the PPP Prime Minister led by Bilawal, because they haven't joined this government at this point of time.
They're supporting it from outside.
Supporting from outside. So I think Pakistan will continue in its poly crisis. There would be an illusion of political stability because the army backing this PDM government or this PMLN government, and Imran Khan's challenge will be contained by keeping him in jail or doing a deal with him. So I think what we are going to see is an illusion of stability, but a Pakistan still facing severe challenges on the economic and security front from the TTP and from the West. So India is not the #1 challenge.
As I said, I still have so many questions to ask, but we have run out of time. Thank you so very much, sir. I think that was a very clear sort of explanation on your book, of course, which again, I recommend everybody pick up, whoever's interested in the subcontinent or actually diplomacy per se. I do look forward to having you again with us sometime, sir.
Happy to do that. Happy to do a deep dive.
Yes, sir. That would be a wonderful thing to do. That was High Commissioner and Ambassador Ajay Bisaria, who's done stints in Canada and Pakistan, talking to us about his incredible book called Anger Management and about the recent situation in Pakistan. I do hope you enjoyed this show. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to StratNewsGlobal. It's a new show called Ambassador's Briefing, where we look at foreign envoys from across the world who are in India and the countries they represent. I'm your host, Ramananda Sengupta. Our very, very special guest today is Mr. Dilshad Akatov, who is the ambassador from the Central Asian Republic of Uzbekistan. Thank you so much for joining us, Ambassador.
Yes, thank you very much, first of all, for this talk, for this conversation. It's very, very interesting, of course.
Sir, you know, when you look at India before you came here, our countries have a ancient relationship, right from the time of the Soviet Union, and people to people, business and everything we've had. How do you think the relationship is now at the moment? Is it the same? What do people in Uzbekistan think when they think of India?
Thank you. Very interesting question it is. I would like to correct you. Really, the relationship or the ties between our peoples, between our countries, date back not, of course, to Soviet time. Of course, yes, in Soviet time we had very good, close friendship and relations, but the ties between Uzbek and Indian people date back to many. Not centuries, but many thousand years, I could say. Yes, in the ancient time, even before Silk Road period, the people of Uzbekistan and India had really close contacts, trade contacts through trade relations. Culturally, also, we were very close at that time. At that time, 2,000 years ago, maybe more, the main connectivity route between our regions, between our countries, was the spicy route created before Silk Road. Of course, Silk Road is very, very famous in the scientific community and so on, but as I mentioned, historians, archaeologists, and so on, during the excavations, found a lot of things that reflect the history of our peoples and our countries. Really, it's very ancient, very deeply rooted, and dates back to thousands of years, not even centuries, thousands of years. We were connected also through, for instance, through Buddhism. In the territory of the south part of Uzbekistan, it was the part of Kushan Empire, for example, 2,000 years ago. It was a Buddhistic kingdom, Buddhistic empire, and many exponates, many historical, some ancient things were explored in this area also, and some Buddhistic temples and so on. But I think so that the connectivity between, at least the cultural connectivity and trade connectivity between our peoples date back to the time, to the period that much more older than the Kushan Empire period, or Kushan Empire time, 2,000 plus years, actually.
That's a lot of time to...
Yes. And of course, in medieval time, of course, we had good relations even through Silk Road also. Then Silk Road came later in the medieval time, and then through Silk Road we were connected also, of course.
Sir, you've been here, I think since the pandemic started. I think you arrived here at a very sort of difficult time, I suppose. But now, having been in India for a few years, is there any specific area which you're focusing on to sort of help bilateral ties? Is it building business, or is it building tourism, or is there some specific area where you feel that you could, help improve the relationship even further?
Yes, we actually, between our countries, there are huge potential and opportunities for cooperation, for relationship, and we cannot, of course, be being limited with some areas. It's time. It's so really current time is the globalization time, and that's why we cannot be limited with classical political, economic, and some cultural relations. Of course, we have a lot of other areas within which we are cooperating now, and for instance, within the last 5-6 years, we explored, we open for each other the absolutely new areas of our cooperation, even some areas in which we have found some new sub areas, also sub directions. For instance, healthcare. Also, we cannot now imagine that, or could not at that time, for 5 years ago, imagine that some Indian hospitals, for instance, can be created in Uzbekistan. Now we have some Indian hospitals, really multi-specialty, or will be soon super specialty hospitals also. Or the same relates to the education area. 5-6 years ago, there were no Indian universities in Uzbekistan, for instance. But within the last 4 years, since 2019, the Indian universities started to open their branches or the joint universities. Now we have 4 Indian universities in our country, in different various regions of Uzbekistan. It is also very good opportunity and the perspectives area for our relations. It's about, of course, higher education, but we have also the huge opportunities in the area of secondary education or skill development in Uzbekistan. I mean, vocational education and so on and so on. We can attract Indian knowledge, Indian skills, Indian experience to our country through some kind of institutions, and the same of course relates to the healthcare area with hospitals, Indian branches or joint hospitals with Indian partners. We of course we ensure we improve the healthcare system of Uzbekistan, because Indian experience is huge in this area, and India is one of the leading countries for the healthcare.
Right.
And at the same time, we attract also the really big skills, big knowledge, big technologies from India.
Right.
Healthcare technologies to Uzbekistan. All these skills, knowledge, and technologies are meet absolutely to the international standards, for example. That's why it's for us really, really important. Or one more area, we explored also, we opened within these 4 or 5 years, it's direct cooperation between our regions,
Right.
for instance.
Of course.
Before 2019 or 2018, we didn't have some kind of direct cooperation between the Indian state, for instance, or Uzbekistan's vilayat, the region.
Okay.
But 2019, it's this decision based on of course, on the agreement between 2 leaders, between my president, Mr. Shavkat Mirziyoyev, and Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji. During the visit of my president to India, official state visit, was it 2018 in October, and then after 1 year of after this visit, we started, or we launched actually first pilot project. We established the direct partnership between Andijan vilayat or Andijan region of Uzbekistan and Gujarat, state Gujarat.
Oh, okay.
Since that time, we have, for example, this direct partnership. It's the direct regional partnership, we call it so. And one more, in the last year, we established second, the direct partnership. It is second project, of course, between Fergana region of Uzbekistan and Haryana, state Haryana of India. It's very good to explore new areas, new directions. I don't know, some opportunities for the cooperation, for good relationship between 2 countries.
Right.
That's why. And as well as the same relates to the city partnerships, for example. 2018, the twin city partnership was established between Samarkand city, world famous historical city, and world famous also historical city Agra, for instance. Yeah, between Samarkand and Agra, both are twin city. Has twin city partnership. Both are like brothers. Yeah, two brothers. Yeah.
Right.
Samarkand is an ancient city, it's a world famous 2,750 years old city in Uzbekistan. And Agra is very old city also, and actually through these two cities we were connected historically also.
Right.
And that's why it was very important. Yeah, the project also, it was first pilot project to establish some kind of relationship, and now we are working on the creation of the same partnership between Bukhara and Hyderabad, for example, and we have some other some kind of relationships stories, and I mean in the future we will establish with more.
So
much
tourism,
more Indian.
sort of, if you look at, is another sort of an area where I suppose I've been noticing a lot of promotional going on about tourism in Uzbekistan.
Absolutely, yes.
I think the fear among most people here when they speak is that of course, now that the pandemic is over, that was one part of it. Subsequently, this Ukraine crisis. So, apart from the fact that Uzbekistan is such a beautiful place and there are so many places which people can go to, would you like to tell us, whether it is absolutely safe for tourism right now, number one? Number two, is there some space or some place that you would recommend, which not many people in India know about, which perhaps you could recommend that anybody who visits from India should visit that place?
Yes, actually, each corner of Uzbekistan is very interesting.
What's your personal favorite?
For tourists from India, from our Indian friends, of course, because of we can offer a really wide range of opportunities for tourists across the globe, of course, as well as from India. It's about some kind of so-called historical tourism, like the trips to the cities like Samarkand, Bukhara, Khiva, for instance, Shahrisabz, Tashkent, as well as capital city, and or some pilgrimage tourism also we can offer also in this area. A lot of opportunities for Buddhists from India, for instance, to have a travel to Surkhandarya region in the southern part. As I mentioned, we have some very ancient temples, Buddhistic temples were explored the 25 or 27 years ago by joint excavation or of Uzbek and Japanese archaeologists, for example, and very ancient Buddhistic temples. The both some areas, but as well as we have very beautiful landscapes, for example, and really rich. We have mountains areas, high mountains, 4+, 5+, and we have desert areas, for the huge desert, like in Sahara, for example, in Africa. They're pure desert, not steppes, but deserts area. We have flat areas, also oases, then with rivers, with lakes, very beautiful lakes, and so on. And as well as for winter tourism or winter sport, also we have appropriate, very created within the high international standards places. For instance, in the not so far from Tashkent, 60 kilometers from Tashkent, we have the resort, the Amirsoy resort. It's actually it's open within the entire year, whole year, but spatial, it was created for winter leisure, winter sport, and so on.
You still have, of course, a few more years here. But during the time that you spent here so far, what has been your impression of this country, number one? And what is the message you will take back when you go back to Tashkent and probably become foreign minister, for all I know? Think.
Thank you. Actually, I can say that I must be very happy to be appointed to your country, to India. India is a huge country. India is a great country. Not just only geographically. Of course, geographically it's huge, really. If we fly from Delhi to Chennai, it takes, for example, 3 and plus hours, for instance. If we fly from Tashkent to Moscow, for instance, yeah, it takes also almost the same time. Yeah, it is the depth, it is the length of Indian Indian geographical location. But India is very big, one of the biggest economic power in the world now, 5th economy in the world, and will be, I think, in the next years will be also political big power in political arena, in global policy in the world, and a lot of really huge opportunities there are in your country, and for each diplomat, for each ambassador, it is really the rich, huge experience. It is really the big school, I could say, because of India is, I think so, India is one of the biggest diplomatic hubs in the world also, as well as. And the diplomatic corps is very, very big here. 165 plus diplomatic missions are present in Delhi, for instance, and as well as in the big Indian cities also present some diplomatic missions, honorary consulates or consulates, and so on and so on. Really huge opportunities for the fulfillment of the tasks for each diplomat in India, for fulfillment of their job, diplomatic job in India, and as well as India is very rich in nature, in culturally, of course, and in terms of customs, in terms of traditions, and so on. And we, Uzbek and Indian people, of course, they have both have a lot of similarities, a lot of common things, even in linguistically also. I cannot talk about our history or about the similarities in our culture, in our customs, traditions, and so on. But linguistically also, almost I heard so that almost 5,000 common words we have in our language between Uzbek and Hindi language, at least, yeah, and so on. And that's why I feel myself in India like at home, at my own home.
It is your home, Ambassador.
My homeland.
It is very much your homeland.
Yes,
As I said earlier, you will go back and you'll probably feel that India will always remain your home.
Of course, India, after finishing of my tenure of my diplomatic mission, India will remain as a most interesting and most important part of not of my diplomatic life, but the life as a man, yeah, as a people.
That was the ambassador of Uzbekistan, Mr. Dilshad Akarov, talking to us about the bilateral relations between our countries, which are centuries old, and they're not just surviving but thriving. If you like this program, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And we look forward to seeing you again on our next show. Thank you.
For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to Ambassador's Brief, a new series on StratNewsGlobal, where we talk to foreign envoys who run missions in New Delhi. It's an opportunity to get to know diplomats as well as countries which would otherwise normally not be found in the normal news cycle. Our special guest today is the ambassador of Azerbaijan to India, Dr. Ashraf Shikalayev. Thank you so much, Dr. Shikalayev, for joining us. It's a real pleasure to have you with us. And, I'd like to begin the conversation with a question that struck me. You're a qualified civil engineer. You have a doctorate in civil engineering. You also have a master's in business administration. What made you decide to get into diplomacy?
That's a very good question. You see, life sometimes is evolving in unpredictable way. So I was the oil engineer, and we are oil country. And at that time, when I defended my PhD thesis, by the way, that was in the area of ecology, I was invited to join the foreign ministry because the head of economic section, he thought that he would need an oil professional on his team. And I gladly accepted it and never regretted that decision.
I know, I saw that you've already been very senior positions in the government, in that sense. If we were to now look at bilateral relations between India and Azerbaijan, would you like to sort of, classify the relationship between on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 is like absolutely excellent and there's no problems at all, and 1 is like bad news, we don't want to be here? Where would you put this relationship between Azerbaijan and India, and why?
That is another interesting question. You see, ambassadors, we should be a little bit skeptical. If we judge the relationship as 5, which is excellent, you reach the absolute peak.
Exactly.
There is no way to
then
grow.
It cannot get better.
Yeah, that is why I do not judge our work. There are some achievements that we are proud of. There are some achievements in bilateral relationship that we are happy of. And I leave to you and to audience to judge at the end of this interview for themselves.
That's a good answer, I think. One of the things that I also noticed is that, our trade relationship has been really going up at a rapid pace. It's been 15-20%. It's been going up every year, which is a very positive thing. But, there is a balance of trade issue, because I think we import more than we export. What do you think can be done to sort of try and balance this and also improve it even more? What are the steps where maybe India can do something, maybe Azerbaijan can do something? Would you like to list a couple of steps that you feel can be done but has not yet been done?
You see, when you balance big and small, there is always a challenge. When you balance two economies that are of the same size, that is achievable. But India is the 5th largest economy of the world. It is $3.5 trillion economy. Azerbaijan is, last year, GDP was $79 billion US. You cannot balance, because the demands of 1.4 billion people India is much more than what Azerbaijan can offer. And what India can offer to Azerbaijan demand is much less than what India can offer. That is why with the big and small, you cannot balance it. You can diversify.
Mm-hmm.
You can streamline the trade between the two countries to the benefit and priorities of both countries. And that is what's happening. if we look at the trade statistics, last year it was the record between the two countries. We reached the trade turnover $2 billion US,
Right.
out of which we exported crude oil for 2 million tons of crude oil to India.
Right.
And it cost $1.6 billion US. And the purchases from India was around $200 million US, right? So if you look at the sales of crude, that was also on the peak for 10 years. So it increases. Is it a lot? It constitutes only 2% of what India is buying from the world, right? So there is potential, there is dynamic, we're growing in trade, and at the same time, I mean, you cannot balance these two.
I mean, I understand the way you put it. Once you explain it like that, I mean, a whole lot of other trade imbalances also sort of, make sense, because it's if you're a bigger economy, it's difficult to balance the two. I understand your point, sir.
The same comes to visits of people. So tourists coming from India to Azerbaijan, you cannot expect the same amount of tourists coming from Azerbaijan to India, because population of Azerbaijan is 10.1 million people.
Approximately, okay.
Yeah. And so it can be more people always going from big India to Azerbaijan.
Right.
You can position yourself as attractive destination for Indian visitors. That is.
But, I haven't had the pleasure of going to Azerbaijan, but I've visited some of the other, what were the former Soviet republics. I've been to Uzbekistan and I've been to Tajikistan a couple of times. I noticed that there is still a kind of a fondness, a friendly thing towards Indians for some reason.
The same with Azerbaijan.
But has that gone up? What is the general, do people in Azerbaijan think about India sometimes that way?
India, you see, Azerbaijan and India has long historic relationship, because Azerbaijan was on spice route.
Right.
From India, spice route was going through Azerbaijan to Europe. And in Azerbaijan, you would find Indian temple, the Atashkar temple.
Right.
It is translated home of fire. So the fire worshipping in old times was in Azerbaijan and in India. And this one particularly is Indian temple.
Right.
It is preserved by the government of Azerbaijan as museum. It is inscribed in the UNESCO heritage list. It is Indian heritage in Azerbaijan, right?
Okay.
And you would not have the temple in Azerbaijan if there were not Indians living in those times in Azerbaijan. And this is inscriptions on the entrance to that Atashkar temple.
Okay.
Now, it shows that India is, yes, known as in Azerbaijan, it is respected in Azerbaijan, and I should say it is loved in Azerbaijan, because India gave to the world yoga, and there are so many practitioners of yoga in the world, in Azerbaijan as well. India gave fantastic cinematographer to the world, Bollywood and Tollywood. And there are so many lovers of Indian movies in Azerbaijan in particular.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
And one of them is me.
Oh.
I love Indian movies.
Well, that's nice. What was the last Indian movie that you've seen? Have you seen something here? Have you been to maybe a theater here?
Yes. I watch Indian movies, and particularly follow the movies being shot in Azerbaijan. And this is another story, because the Indian movies being shot in Azerbaijan, they increase the number of tourists between the two countries because of better awareness of Azerbaijan. Now, the beauty of Azerbaijan is that it is translated as the land of fire. Why it is the land of fire? Because in old times there were multiple places. It is an oil-rich country, and multiple places where gas was coming under the ground and it was burning. So from that time, Azerbaijan derives its name as a land of fire. All right. And that is why now there is one place remained, that is Yanardağ, Burning Hill. If you Google, you will see it. It's burning day and night. That is one of the most favorite destinations for the tourists all over the world, Indians in particular. They visit the Yanardağ, Burning Hill, day and night, maybe 5,000 years burning. They visit the Ateşgah, home of fire, temple, and so many places. Plus, it is, one of the most beautiful capitals of the world is Baku city. That is why Indian cinematographer, they come, they love shooting movies in Azerbaijan, and it increases business travel, it increases the tourism travel to Azerbaijan. Now we are connected by direct flights. 3 times a week, there is a flight by Azerbaijan Airlines to India. Delhi and Baku are connected. So it shows the interest in the market. It shows the growth of mutual travelers.
So we've talked about people-to-people ties. What about political ties? Do we have regular high-level contacts between the two countries?
That's a good question. They were visits at the level of foreign ministers.
Okay.
If we take a look, in 2018, there was a non-aligned movement summit in Baku, and Vice President of India, Mr. Naidu, Minister of External Affairs, Mr. Jaishankar, they visited Azerbaijan. Then, recently, end of last year, there were political consultations in Delhi, and Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Azerbaijan, Mr. Elnur Mamedov, he came. It was very successful political consultations in Delhi. Then he came again. He was invited to Ryazina dialogue in the March of this year. Had a chain of bilateral meetings. Then, few days after, the Secretary West of Minister of External Affairs, Mr. Sanjay Verma, he will be going to Baku because there will be an online movement ministerial meeting in Baku, and he'll be heading delegation to Baku. Then, end of October, we'll be having Intergovernmental Commission meeting.
Right.
And the Minister of State for Commerce and Industry, Madam Anupriya Patel, she will be heading Indian delegation. And during that meeting, all aspects of bilateral economic relations will be discussed in Baku. So high-level visits are continuing, going.
No, I was looking at Azerbaijan on the map, and I noticed that it's right on the Caspian Sea. It's got a coast on the Caspian Sea, which is actually a closed sea. There is no,
True.
out of that.
Yeah.
I've always wondered where the water comes from, because if it's closed, then, but that's a different thing. But the Caspian Sea is going to be used as part of the international north-south transport corridor, I think.
Yes.
From Russia down, and it'll go past, I think it go via Baku and go down. But that corridor has been under discussion for almost 2 decades now, and I don't know what is moved. I think some small shipments have come, but beyond that, not much has happened. Do you think, A, why do you think there's a delay? And B, do you think once it is fully operational, it will add value to Azerbaijan, it will add value to India in a different way, or will it be trade as usual?
You see how it is.
Because if you put that line through, you come right down to Chabahar, I think, and then from there you can come through. I understand that there are so many countries and that it's a transshipment problem, that it's not just, a train, it's ship and then road and then train and all kinds of things are involved. But 20 years is a long time.
That is true. That is true. But the good news is that on 17th of May, Russian Federation and Iran signed agreement on the construction of the missing railway link between city of Rasht and city of Astara on border of Azerbaijan. And with that construction of this railway link, the Indian exporters will bring their goods to ports of Iran, and then smoothly by railway will reach Russian Federation market and European market.
Okay.
And then there is no need to reload on the trucks, then go again reload on the railway. It will be very smooth operation. Now that construction will take 3 years, and it is hoped that end of 2026, early 2027, it will become operational.
Oh, okay.
Then the exporters, Indian exporters, they will be saving some 50% on time to reach those markets, and it will be some 40% cheaper.
Right.
So it would be very advantageous, and this corridor would attract a lot of goods from India and to India, from European and from Russian markets.
So definitely then both countries stand to benefit.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, I was also thinking that the entire world has been impacted by this crisis in Ukraine. How has Azerbaijan been hit by the crisis? Has it been impacted at all?
You see, this conflict between Ukraine and Russia, it affected the whole world.
That's right.
The prices for food went up. The commodity prices increased. The tourism flows changed. The airlines started changing the routes of flights. So it affected global supplies, global transportation. It affected so many countries. In some way, we were also affected. But, on the other hand, if you look at the tourism to Azerbaijan, it is going on. If you look at the Indian tourism in particular to Azerbaijan, that is growing.
Oh, okay.
And that is growing. That is why the direct flights are being opened.
Okay.
Yeah. So it shows that, well, it didn't affect much tourism to Azerbaijan. If we speak about tourism, tourism is growing. Tourism is growing almost exponentially. If we look at the 2017 figures, the tourism from India to Azerbaijan was only 17,000 people. Now tourism companies, even after pandemic years, they're looking for 1 million visitors from India to Azerbaijan annually.
1 million.
1 million. Wow. This is not my words. This is the words that I repeat, and they think that it is attainable target. Last year, half of it was COVID pandemic year.
That's right.
So restrictions were there. Last year, it was 75,000 visitors from India. Now, this year, figures I expect will be much higher, as Azerbaijan now on the Indian tourism market, it is the hot, desired tourism destination. It is a land of fire that Indians wish to visit. It is a country to which you can get easily e-visa. Even talking here, you can get e-visa from your mobile in 1 hour. It guaranteed in 3 hours, urgent visa, but majority of cases, majority of cases you get it as early as in 1 hour.
Wow.
Yeah. So it is easy to travel. It is not expensive to get that e-visa, even urgent e-visa, quite convenient. That stimulates travel to Azerbaijan. An increase in travel to Azerbaijan, it brings Indian weddings, it brings Indian business people. So the more people come as tourists, next time they come as business people. The business travelers, they bring their families next time. So it is kind of reinforcing each other. And of course, the special role is Indian cinematographer,
Of course,
the Bollywood and Tollywood.
What about students? You're a student of you said civil engineering with oil. Would Indians want to go there and pick up something on the oil, how to drill oil, or could that be is the education system somewhere that Indians would go in for?
There are education systems. There are scholarships offered by the universities and government of Azerbaijan, and so many students from India, they come and study at their own expense. But the figures of Indian students studying in Azerbaijani university are not compared to those in the neighboring countries. They are much higher in those countries. Whether they study in the oil industry, I don't know. But I know that the tendency is that they prefer the medical sciences. Once again, there is a website of the Ministry of Education. It is called Study in Azerbaijan. Every young person from India willing to study in Azerbaijan can go to that website, choose the university of he prefers, and apply to it.
I'd like to conclude with one last question to you, sir. Is there something during your stay here so far, is there something that made you feel either really very surprised or really very pleased with what you were seeing, something that made you happy or something that made you unhappy? I mean, either of the two. Any one thing that you will remember for a long time, no matter where you go?
That's an interesting question. You see, as ambassador, as a person, your own heart fills with happiness on some achievements, on some solemn occasions. So once I was invited to the wedding, and for the first time in my life, I saw what I saw in Indian movies, how the newlyweds are whirling, going around the fire. And of course, that was awesome. That filled my heart with happiness and the best wishes of happiness to this young couple. And they were, the bride, she was the daughter of the friend of mine. And this is one case. Another that I remember is that there was young chef Olympiad in Kolkata very recently. And one cook from Azerbaijan, from Kasa cooking school, he participated. And he got into final. And we were kind of asking, does he have chance to get 1, 2, 3 places? Is he will be, among the winners? And nobody would answer you. They say that we don't know. It is the jury who is considering. So we went there to Kolkata, and they are bringing the envelopes and secretly, giving it to the conferencier, and he opens the envelope and he says, "Number 3, India." Everyone applaud. Oh. And the cook from India, the lady, she came, she got her award. Then number 2, Thailand. Everyone applauds. And when it came to number 1, the gold medal, number 1 gold medal goes to Azerbaijan. Oh. And I was I was filled with awe and happiness at that moment. Then the young cook from Azerbaijan, he got the gold medal, he got the major trophy, and he took it to Azerbaijan. Wow. That was a great achievement. But of course, there are so many times when you feel happy. The first flight between Delhi and Baku opened, you feel happy, you feel satisfied. You look at the statistics, the trade between the countries go to the record level, you feel happy. You have successful consultations of the Intergovernmental Commission, you feel happy. You have high-level visits, successful high-level visits, you feel happy. So if you look back, every achievement brings you a level of satisfaction, but at the same time, you feel that you should do more. You should do more to improve and strengthen economic ties between the countries, to strengthen the people-to-people ties.
On that, terribly happy note, I noticed that we really got excited over the whole thing. I do look forward to having you again on this show. And thank you so very much for, giving us the time. And for all the viewers that are watching, that was Dr. Ashraf Shukalayev, the ambassador of Azerbaijan to India. And I do hope you like this particular show. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And bokies and big bats are all welcome in the comments below. Thank you, and we'll see you again.
For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates. This is StratNewsGlobal. I'm Amitabh Brevi. On The Gist today, our guest is Indonesia's ambassador to India, Ms. Ina Krishnamurthy. Ambassador Krishnamurthy, thank you so much for giving us time. It's just been a few months, I think you've been in India.
Yes.
And I'm really glad that we've been able to
Thank you
up.
for having me. It's a pleasure and honor for me to be here. with
Pleasure
you.
is all ours, ma'am. India and Indonesia, Ambassador, the locations itself, the geographical locations are so strategic
Yes.
that it makes it natural for us to be partners apart from history and
Yes.
civilization and
Yes.
language links,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Very true. Surprisingly, when I was announced to be the ambassador of Indonesia to India, one of the challenge for me is to communicate with the domestic. When I said India is our neighbor, they questioned. And I said to them that Andaman Nicobar Island is actually only 120 kilometers and 1 hour flight from Indonesia, which is from Aceh. So then they are realizing that from the map, very close. So when I said neighbor, they question because they see neighbors means ASEAN and Australia, but not India. So yes, it's quite near. And second issue, you talk about past, present, and future. I think recently I make this statement over and over again that between India and Indonesia, we need to build connectivity, not only the hard infrastructure, but also the connectivity between the past, the present, and the future. So we sometimes ignore this because we thought, well, we're close already. So why we need to build connectivity of the past and the present and the future?
Now, again, like I'm saying, the location, Indonesia calls itself, global maritime fulcrum. As you said, 1 hour flight from Aceh to Andaman and Nicobar Islands. What is it? 500 kilometers, maybe. Tell us a little bit more about India and Indonesia's maritime cooperation.
Well, for maritime cooperation, now is very close because we have so many engagement in all pillars, be it in P2P, be it in B2B, and also G2G. Even for G2G, we even established the joint task force of Andaman Nicobar and Sabang. That's for the G2G part because with the G2G between provinces, it makes the cooperation makes it concrete and more implementable rather than capital to capital. For maritime also, because the first time in the history of our bilateral relations, we are having a general, marine, from time to time, he has this mission of increasing, strengthening, deepening the relationship in the maritime defense cooperation. And it's very important for us to always be mindful of the Indian Ocean. It's not dividing the two countries. It's actually converging the two countries, sort of, yes.
So you're referring to your defense attaché, I presume, who you're saying who's a general.
Yeah, general.
And you're being humble not to tell us that you're the first.
Yes, the first women ambassador from the 73 bilateral relations between India and Indonesia. Quite proud of that.
I would absolutely
Quite
imagine
proud of
so.
it. At least from the point of view of my government, it's time to show Indonesian people that maybe with the soft power of being a woman, this relationship can go further.
More power to you, ma'am.
Yes.
Again, just on the maritime issue, you
Yes,
mentioned
Amita.
Sabang port.
Yes.
What is the progress there, and why is it, could you explain to our audience, why is it so strategically important?
Yes. Even now, I believe the Indian government already sent experts to have the feasibility study. And the feasibility study already submitted to our government to see whether investors from India can develop the port. And Sabang, the provincial government, which is Aceh, very keen on having investors from India. I cannot mention the investor though, Amitabh. But yes, we are so keen to have investor coming and making the port of Sabang more livable because the challenge is very high. It's the door of the Indian Ocean, so the tide is very high. There's also the challenge of the pastime tsunami also to be considered. So many things that needs to be done for the Sabang port. Now it's not the time for us to think about the challenge of the post-COVID economic, but it's time for us to think about the future. So the investment for the future, because port is quite resources. It needs quite a bit resources, to be built and managed. But it is important for the future investment. Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, part of the investment between India and Indonesia into the relationship in the maritime domain is exercises that our navies and coast guards have.
Yes.
We had a CORPAT,
Yes.
I think coordination patrol recently as well.
Yes, and post-COVID or during COVID even, because our Minister of Defense came to India during the highest number of Delta. But he was so brave to coming to India to show support and be thankful of India's support to us by bringing the vaccine early on, right? So since 2018, there's an increase of exercise between our naval ships and our personnel, be it in land or on the sea. And I see also increase of the naval ships coming to Cochin. I'm here 5 months already. 3 ships already coming to Cochin. So
stay here longer.
Very rapid development in that particular area. Yes.
India has a defense policy of make in India and maybe export or make for the world. A neighbor of yours, the Philippines, has just got into a deal with us for the BrahMos supersonic missile, which is built and developed in collaboration with Russia. What kind of collaboration are you looking at? I mean, is BrahMos part of it, or any other systems? Well,
on BrahMos, I cannot. Maybe I cannot openly discuss here, but I think I don't want to compare with the Philippines, but our relation with India is very apparent. Even in the PKO, when I was in New York, it's very apparent. We fought together for the budget. We both...
Peacekeeping operation.
Yes, the peacekeeping operation. We both are the 10 largest PKO contributing countries. And for the cooperation in the defense industry, we both agree since early on that this is not about merely procurement cooperation, right? So this is about having dialogue and sharing the best practices and best technology there is. So I believe so many MOU, so many cooperation, because we have also our strategic defense industry in Surabaya, in Jakarta, PT PAL, in Bandung, PT Pindad. So we have established dialogue and discussion on that particular area, which is sharing best practices, sharing the knowledge of the best technology there is, and at the same time to find best solutions when there are challenges because of certain global value chain disruption, like now, right? Because now defense industry is experiencing one of the biggest challenge in the history because of the disruption in the global value chain.
You're talking about global value chains, Ambassador Krishnamurthy. You are the president of the G20. Very successful foreign ministerial meet, the summit.
Thank you.
In November. India takes over in December as well.
All the best to India. All the best to India.
Considering how Indonesia has navigated these very, very difficult times, I must say congratulations to Indonesia as well. But what is different in Indonesia's vision for when you are president this time in the G20? And what are the outcomes that you're looking at achieving maybe after the summit?
Okay, maybe I should start with thanking India.
Because the swap?
With the one of the closest collaboration and coordination in the history of G20, because we are on par in terms of the one of the biggest player in the region. You are the biggest player in South Asia. We are the biggest player in Southeast Asia. We share also way back historical struggle to independence. So we share a lot of things that leads to very harmonized thinking and concept in foreign policy. So that I think we are successful, if you say that we are successful, because of the support of developing countries. As you may know, G20 consists of 9 developing, 11 developed countries, right? So we navigate between the two groups. That is why we are very mindful that we need the support of developing countries so that we can ensure that the developed countries also can come on board with our thinking and vision. The second. Thirdly, I believe that the summit, my president keeps saying over and over and over again, he knows very well that we changed our vision of G20 presidency. When we took over last year, December, there is nothing until February. Then it happened, all these dynamics, the global dynamics. So he knows very well that this mechanics of G20 needs the world to make a more relevant result in terms of political and more importantly economic. That's why during FMM we have only 2 main agenda, which is strengthening multilateralism, and second agenda is the food and energy security. Nothing else, because other stuff can wait until both are resolved.
mentioning your President Widodo, and after the G7 meeting, he went to both Kyiv and to
Yes.
Moscow. He's invited both presidents.
He's very brave. He's very brave.
He took a train, I think, from Poland to Kyiv, right? And both presidents are invited. I don't know how that will pan out with the 11 developed countries that
Yes.
you're talking about, especially the Western countries. But the war in Ukraine, the invasion, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and the problem that's created for the whole world. For example, food security, when you're talking about, or energy security, how are India and Indonesia helping each other or others in that?
Yeah. So I believe early on, I think in March or April, the discussion between our leaders, and also ministers level increase and strengthen. If you see which at the end come viral with helicopters, both leaders sit side by side, it shows how closely we are in our dialogue, right? So India and Indonesia both share one common interest. We both have huge population. It is not in our interest to have value chain that is disrupted. Now our focus is on two, which is grain and gas. The grain, India holds lots and lots of stocks which a lot of countries have interest on. And on the gas also, fertilizers. Both us, we need it for our farmers because we are, both countries are basically agriculture countries. So I think we should think about not only the interest of the developed countries when they said against the war, but they need to figure out what are the solutions. So that is why your minister, Jai Shankar, always voices this, my minister as well, that the interests of developing countries need to be heard, need to be listened in whatever form there is, because all high population countries are developing, right? So that is why we also involve the island countries during G20. And India supported that because many diaspora of India also in the island countries. So I think India and Indonesia, if we converge together our voices, is about 1.6 billion populations altogether. And it's quite loud for the world to listen. That's what I believe. And secondly, if we talk about what G20 can do, it's the only forum which involve in the policy making process of the world. If you see the combination of the members, APEC can be said develop and developing. Eastern can, but they are not making policy of the world. G20 does. So it is important to make G20 works and more relevant to the current dynamics. If not, then why the leaders need to meet in November, right? There must be a solution, yes.
You talked about wheat, but everybody has grain. You had a recent visit, I think, to Uttar Pradesh where you met Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath.
Yes.
So, I mean, I don't know
I
whether...
thank him because some of the wheat come from there.
Correct. What about palm oil? India imports a lot of palm oil from Indonesia as well. I mean, is there any movement in terms of...
Well, we opened already in April, right? But not as the speed and the, how should I say, the amount that India wants. But we have problems, we have challenges. Now, the last time I heard, 20-something companies, especially the small, medium enterprises, they're closed because the price is so low that they cannot operate. So we must make sure that this war or whatever global dynamic there is will not jeopardize the livelihood of grassroots. That's what we talk about. Me and Yogi Ji also talk about the grassroots, because the economy is from the grassroots, not by the cities, not by urban, but the rural people. So I believe palm oil problems will be as is if we're not helping the price to be, competitive sort of, so that the commodities from Ukraine must be open so that we could balance the price, because vegetable oils also come from there, the sunflower. Also, we need to make sure that the value chain, I remember talking about, I'm sorry, I'm talking about value chain. I remember Thomas Friedman in his book, The World is Flat, believe that the world is not round, but it's flat because of the value chain. And more, I believe now the world is much more flatter than before, because it is what it is. We cannot, some say we must deglobalize, cannot, it's too late. So that is why we cannot deglobalize. We need to make sure that the current situation of globalization be beneficial to all of us. And therefore, the key, the doors that lock, the bridge that was tortured and destroyed must be built again, and then make sure that the value chain is happening.
And in this short time that you've been here, and even shorter, post your credentials, you only 3 months, I think, since you presented your
Credentials in March,
already Uttar Pradesh. You've been to Odisha as well.
Odisha,
and that's again Assam, not Assam, but Odisha is also on the coast.
Yes.
So what are you looking at in terms of different states and Indonesia collaborating?
Well, very interestingly. So I went to 3 states already, right? So Orissa, Assam, and UP. So interestingly, I see that the past, I believe still, the past needs to be translated into the future. Because every time I go everywhere, they talk about, Indonesia, we have centuries of relations. Our ancestors didn't say that. But maybe we should change the narrative that G20, we swap. What shows? The closeness of us, that we can swap G20 presidency. Troika, we will together, from December 1st, we will be together with Brazil. We need to talk about future, so the narrative must be changed. My name is Krishnamurthy, and I'm the first women ambassador coming here. So the issue must be not changed, perhaps revitalized into the future. So in Orissa, I believe I talk about Bali Yatra. I want to revisit or revitalize the Bali Yatra. I hope, if not this year because of G20, maybe next year we have the Bali Yatra. I met some people also already talking about Bali Yatra and bringing the ship here. We have this very beautiful ship that can come to India. In Assam, we talk about disaster management. We have same problems, tremor, always. We talk about that. And bamboo in Assam. We both have same strength, but different way of thinking, which is, for me, it's very unique. How come 2 countries, 2 nations, same interest, but different thinking? It shows the closeness of the past, but then again, we need to make the past as vehicle for the future.
Well put, Ambassador, and I hope you're successful in moving that or rebuilding that bridge from the past to the future, and
Hopefully.
just doesn't remain, two ends. It's actually connected.
Yes.
Ukraine again, brings up so many issues. What's happening in Ukraine, and sovereignty and territorial integrity is one of them. Each country is having its own issues in its own domain. India has had it as well. Indonesia and all countries in ASEAN or in Southeast Asia have that. What is Indonesia's position vis-a-vis sovereignty and problems that it is having in its foreign policy in the area?
Well, if I talk about Indonesia sovereignty, territorial integrity, I need to say it as part of the community of ASEAN, because we have Treaty of Amity and Cooperation, we have these 3 pillars of ASEAN community, we have the ASEAN Charter, we abide to it dearly since '67, and we believe that the principle of ASEAN, which is non-intervention, is still relevant up until now. And my last point on this particular issue is that every country, every nation is not perfect, but we need to have a perfect neighbors or neighboring concept or principles, so that we can live peacefully, so that we can prosper. So with ASEAN, I believe, which is ASEAN since the beginning of time, is the cornerstone of our foreign policy, and I believe for the future also ASEAN still the cornerstone. And on that note, Indonesia will hold the chairmanship in 2023 while you're having the presidency of G20. A beautiful world, perfect world.
In terms of investment development, each country is looking for more and more opportunities. There are so many different models of whether it's bilateral, multilateral. Now, after the Quad, there was IPEF, which has also come. There's BRI. What is Indonesia's position vis-a-vis this? Is it gaining the best from everything, or how does Indonesia decide?
How Indonesia decide? Well, Indonesia decide by national interest, same like India. That's first and foremost. Our foreign policy is basically depends so much on our national interest. On the engagement that you mentioned about whatever documents there is, be it regional, sub-regional, or multilateral, or whatnot, we always say yes with a strong note, which is wait for the engagement to come about. Like, for example, IPEF. We said yes, but we need to see how they follow through.
Similar to what India has done, I think, in IPEF.
Yes, because IPEF for now is one page, and we are still waiting for the engagement to happen frequently, so that we all understand what the initiative is. Same like what we are having with RCEP. We had it for 8 years. The negotiation, we mentioned over and over again that ASEAN is the central power behind the RCEP, and that is why Indonesia wants RCEP to benefit for ASEAN also, because in RCEP, the most interesting part of RCEP is because involve 5 developed countries. That is why the negotiation is not easy. So all engagement that we have, it's considered by so many principles that is not easy to be bent by anyone, including the negotiator like me. But for India and Indonesia in our bilateral engagement or regional engagement, ASEAN-India, we have it. Now we are revitalizing the AI, the ASEAN-India FTA. We are considering the comprehensive strategic partnership between ASEAN and India. So all of this show that now our national interest is very much so in line with India, and more so with ASEAN, because we share the same values, the same principles. Yes.
And if I can also ask you, what is Indonesia's position vis-a-vis, say, organizations like the Quad and AUKUS?
Okay. How should I say? Engagement in foreign policy or foreign relations are always important. Dialogue is more important there than no dialogue at all. Engagement in regional must be and should be considering the needs of each countries without pushing or pulling others into certain direction. We are very uncomfortable when there are other national interests unilaterally push into our national interests. We are very uncomfortable. But all engagement in the region, as well as in sub-region even, is welcome, because engagement in whatever form would help dialogue, peaceful dialogue. So Quad and you said AUKUS, we will see whether it is in collision with our national interests. We already voiced our uncomfortability when AUKUS have this very interesting policy without considering our national interests. We are already voicing it. Same like Quad, I believe Quad is very important engagement, but we will need to see, because India, I think, is an excellent balance in Quad, because you're the only developing countries inside the Quad. So I think, like I said, all engagement are welcome because it's peaceful engagement, hopefully.
Ambassador Krishnamurthy, thank you for this engagement, and hoping that you build more on the India-Indonesia engagement.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
I thank you, Amita. Thank you so much.
Pleasure is all ours. And for our viewers, do send in your feedback about this interview. Any other questions and comments that you have, you can use all our social media handles. This is The Gist on StratNewsGlobal. I'm Amitabh Brevi.
Our leaders, whenever they meet, the geopolitical situation is discussed, and that's how it should be. And it's a candid discussion. Yes. Both sides, explain they discuss and understand. I mean, that's what we have to do. Right. And we have to have more discussions. Absolutely. Like because basically, at the end of the day, I always say India's security is our security, because our location is very clear. We spoke of the civilization and but also geographically, we can't be sort of separated somewhere else. No. But we are talking is of integration. Sure. Now, if we are talking of integration, if we are talking of connectivity, we cannot be in any way be a security threat. Sure. Yeah. So on the matter of the ideas on security, we have to have that dialogue, and that's what is happening. I think at all levels. It's not only at leaders level. Yes, certainly.
Hello and welcome to StratNewsGlobal and our daily program, The Gist. I'm Nitin Gokhale. On this edition of The Gist, I am joined by Milinda Morogoda, the High Commissioner of Sri Lanka to India, and someone who is fresh out of the President's visit, the Sri Lankan President's visit to New Delhi, which has several important outcomes, and who was part of the process to set up that visit and, of course, contribute largely to the upsurge in India-Sri Lanka relations over the past couple of years and what they're doing together. So welcome to this program and welcome to our studio.
Thank you, Nitin. Thank you very much.
So you're fresh out of this last week's visit which happened where President Ranil Wickremesinghe made a quick trip to New Delhi. How would you describe that trip?
Well, I think this is part of a process where, Mr. Wickremesinghe visited largely, this was his first visit, of course, since he assumed duties as president. And India played a major role in the stabilization process. As you know, India provided assistance in various forms of nearly $4 billion in Sri Lanka last year, which really was the key piece, I think, in the stabilization. So Mr. Wickremesinghe initially obviously wanted to thank Prime Minister Modi for this support. Without this, he would not have been able to stabilize the economy. And then to lay the foundation for the next phase, which is the phase of the economic recovery.
Right.
And there, Mr. Wickremesinghe has a very clear vision. He has had it, I think, for the past 25 years, that integration with India economically is the way for Sri Lanka to develop.
Sure.
So he discussed that in detail with Mr. Modi. And they have now put out a joint vision statement between India and Sri Lanka, which puts us the contours of a possible roadmap, a vision as to how this economic recovery could take place through integration, economic integration between the two countries.
In fact, the document is entitled connectivity. I mean, the key word there is connectivity.
That's right.
It's about electricity connectivity, about physical connectivity, air connectivity, people-to-people connectivity. So let's break it down into, what are the tangible outcomes that we are looking at. And I know you've been one of the strong advocates even before you came here through your think tank, the Pathfinders, about economic integration. So if we look at, let's say, the energy security or energy partnership between India and Sri Lanka, where is that going? What are the aspects that India and Sri Lanka are going to focus on?
I think there are two areas. One is electricity, the other is petroleum.
Right.
To start with electricity, the area of electricity, renewable energy. We have signed a MOU between India and Sri Lanka where we will cooperate on renewable energy. And also we will now have a cable link between India and Sri Lanka for electricity, like what you similarly have with Nepal.
That's
right. And also
Bangladesh, and Bangladesh.
In the Sri Lanka's case, obviously it will be under sea cable, or maybe on top. There is a discussion on that with the technical people. But it's a short distance.
Sure.
There we have off the northwestern coast of Sri Lanka. It is believed that we have around 30,000 megawatt capacity for wind energy.
Oh. Wow.
So both
this is Manar.
Off Manar, Punari.
Yeah.
So we both onshore and offshore. And even on the other side, on the Indian side, there's supposed to be another 30,000.
Right.
So India is very much aware of it. India has also, I think, done the necessary surveys.
Right.
So our whole electricity grid at the moment, capacity is 4,300.
Right.
So we will not need this 30,000 in short time. So the idea would be to develop that the 30,000 megawatts through investment, and then provide, obviously take what we need and also to maybe export to India.
Yeah.
The other connected component is hydrogen energy. Sri Lanka is thought to green hydrogen.
Right.
Sri Lanka is, it is believed that Sri Lanka has tremendous potential both for energy production, but also as a distribution center.
Storage and distribution.
Center. So that would be one area on electricity. And if that, so that's part of the integration.
That's right.
Petroleum, what we are envisaging is Trincomalee to be an energy hub.
Right.
So we already have a tank farm there, which Indian Oil and Sri Lanka Petroleum are jointly managing.
Sure.
If you look at India's needs, I think by the year 2030, you will need something like 50% more petroleum than you need now.
Yeah.
And I'm told you need about 1/3 more refining capacity than you have now.
Right.
Now, if there can be a connection where Trincomalee becomes part of your structure, it's become part of it, because that's an energy security issue for you. But if you feel comfortable, then Trincomalee can become an energy hub.
It can become a strategic reserve.
Very clear. Strategic reserve and also
for refining capacity.
So the first step was the tank farm.
Right.
Now the idea would be develop the tank farm and also to look at the multi-product pipeline between India and Sri Lanka, which the Prime Minister himself also
spoke about. Yes,
in his own statement.
Right.
So that work will start now.
Sure.
To see how that can be done. So that could be a win-win for us because it helps our energy security and also it helps you also.
Exactly.
So these are the two pieces
of the energy
side. Right. I mean, then we can go through the others if you wish.
Sure. No, certainly. So tell us about others also.
Well, when you look at connectivity, as you rightly say, the physical side, which we look at, and then we look at trade and the other parts.
Exactly.
So on the physical side, this is one area. The other is, of course, ports. Colombo Port.
Yeah.
I have said this in other forums also. Colombo Port, 80% of the business of Colombo Port is transshipment.
Sure.
Of that, over 70% goes to India. So Sri Lanka is very much integrated into your port.
Already in the port business.
With your growth, we can start expanding and we have space.
Right.
So Colombo Port, there's one port, Trincomalee is another port, so that is on that side. Then you get ferry connectivity, which was again announced by the Prime Minister, between Nagapatnam and Kankasanture, as well as Talemana and Rameshwaram. Talemana and Rameshwaram has been the traditional thing.
And the closest
link, and we have a railway line going right up.
Right.
So therefore, but it's going to take longer because both sides have to be developed.
Right.
Since the pier on the Talemana side is old, it goes back to the British period because that was the place where even during British times connection took place.
Right.
And it is, I'm told, may have to be rebuilt.
Right.
Then on the Rameshwaram side also infrastructure has to be set up. Nagapatnam to Kankasanture, I think what they think is
faster.
Nagapatnam could be developed in about by September, they think.
Right.
And then, of course, the ferry services have to be established.
Sure.
It's not going to be, I mean, I think as active probably as the Rameshwaram Talemana would be, but it would be a start.
Sure.
Air connectivity, we already have air connectivity between Colombo and most cities, and tourism is going to be our main driver for the recovery.
Exactly.
And already about 25% of the tourists coming into Sri Lanka are from India.
Yes.
But now we are talking of connectivity to the other airports. So Jaffna, Colombo,
Jaffna,
Chennai has already, Alliance Air is running.
Started,
and they have expanded also their schedule now. Now they are looking at possibly other points in the east, maybe Batticaloa possibly, and even Trincomalee at some stage.
Yes.
So that is the air aspect of
it.
Then we come to the trade relations, of course, where we have already a free trade agreement between India and Sri Lanka.
Right.
And now we are discussing the possibility of taking it to the next level.
Sure.
And again, Prime Minister in his statement announced his willingness to take it forward and the negotiations should start. So there comes the integration on the trade side. Then, of course, using of rupee.
Yes.
The rupee as converted
Indian rupee to
rupee, and one of the agreements that were exchanged yesterday was basically to have this universal payment interface,
right?
UPI, to be so that people can use RuPay card in Sri Lanka. Tourists can,
exactly. But that will actually ease a lot of burden on the tourists, not to carry cash or even exchange it.
That's right.
And I think Sri Lanka, since tourism is the main driver of foreign exchange earning, I suppose, what is the, I'm taking you away from the vision document a little bit because tourism is the key. And I think a lot of effort has gone into encouraging Indian tourists to start revisiting Sri Lanka or visit for the first time. So from the Sri Lankan side, what are the efforts that have been made for that?
Well, I think the PR and the marketing campaigns are going, but what we must also do is to make it affordable.
Exactly.
So we are looking at how the links can more airline links. We've been talking to airlines here, and how they can be made affordable. Because in the context of the recovery, as you rightly say, tourism is key because that is the lowest hanging fruit in this context. And Sri Lanka has never really realized her full potential in tourism. Because if you look at, our economy is very simple.
Sure.
In the sense that we earn $7.5 billion a year at the peak.
Yes.
First, it dropped during COVID for
Yes.
remittances.
Right.
We earn about $5 billion exports of garments, of which maybe $2 billion we add value, $3 billion we import, some of it from India,
Yes.
from India.
Yes.
So now we are trying to see whether we could do more exports into India as well. Then tea, which everybody talks about, which employs a large number of people,
Right.
a large extent of land, only earns us about $2 billion a year.
Sure.
And then IT services about $1 billion. So that is our spectrum.
Correct.
Tourism, the peak we had was in 2018.
Right.
We had about $4 billion.
Yes.
We have never hit that.
No, again, yeah.
So now we need to get there.
Sure.
So if we can go like say $3-4 million in tourism, our recovery will become much easier.
Yeah.
And then we have to push tourism.
What
Hopefully
we
over
are.
the 7 million.
Yes, yeah, exactly.